I'm Heather Kirk Ballard, and I'm here today with
Wright, University of Arizona,
excellent.
at the Yuma Agriculture Center.
Okay, awesome. And we're here to celebrate you today as a HortLegend.
Uh-oh.
And we want to know all about you.
Okay.
So I have a list of questions here.
Ask away.
And we're going to start with what is your horticultural specialization and what are the primary positions you have held?
Well, this is my first job out of college, and I've been at it for 32 years. So I think I'll keep it
You
till
think
the
you
end.
like it?
Yeah. And my specialization is citrus. It started out being citrus and salinity work.
Mhm.
And that is kind of narrowed because we have mostly a lemon industry in Arizona.
Okay.
And date palms.
Okay.
And date palms is something that I didn't expect to have to work on in 32 years ago, but the industry has flowered since then. And I also deal with homeowners, master gardeners. I do a bit of teaching. So all of that stuff.
A little bit of everything.
Yeah, a little bit of everything.
Excellent. So what has horticulture meant to your life and your career?
Well, it's interesting because horticulture, so I grew up in the suburbs of Denver, Colorado. And my dad worked in the aerospace industry. So I was probably not a candidate if somebody was to look in advance and say, was that guy going to become a horticulturalist? Probably not. But my mom took me to the library as a kid, and I became enamored with gardening books, lots of pictures and that kind of thing. And the Time Life Garden series, which they probably don't do anymore. And there was a book called The Victory Garden.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, James Crockett, I think was the author. So I found those and discovered that I wanted to garden, and my dad let me help him. And then in high school, I took a botany class and I loved it. And by the time I was out of high school, I knew I wanted to work in horticulture.
Wow.
And I pretty quickly realized that if I was going to stop with my bachelor's degree at that time, I'd probably spend my life watering.
Yes, exactly. Cutting grass.
Yeah. So so what I do now is a combination of a couple things that I like doing best. It's firstly doing science, and because I'm a very curious person, and working on something that I enjoy eating. So, I turned down, I had a choice of working on various things at Colorado State when I chose my bachelor's degree, and it was either fruit crops was an option. The other secondary would have been flowers. They had a great carnation and rose industry at the time, but I chose fruit crops to do my specialization as an undergraduate. And then I realized I needed to go and get a PhD, so I went to Texas A&M and got a master's in working with blueberries and salinity. And I'm sorry, that was the PhD. The master's was nut crops, estimating yield in nut crops, and then I went on to do my PhD at A&M in berries and salinity. So I've really wanted to do what I'm doing now since I was getting out of high school. And everyone thinks that's really weird, but I still enjoy it. I still love, I don't love the bureaucracy of the university, but from the standpoint of actually doing the work and meeting with farmers and helping them with their problems and helping homeowners with their problems and doing science and working on something which is cool. Yeah. Particularly date palms, which has added a whole level of interest to my career. It's been really fun all these years.
I love it. Yeah. That's great. All right. What do you consider to be the most rewarding part of your career in horticulture?
Well, probably helping people, helping farmers and helping homeowners. Farmers have issues in the field and they have questions. Of course, we have an applied research program, which means that we help to answer problems that farmers have right now. And right now, there's a lot of disease issues in the date palm industry, and there's some in the citrus industry. So I've had to pivot to a certain extent from being a horticulturist to being a plant pathologist. Yeah. Yeah. So that's fun. And we're seeing some results. And so that, we've been pretty successful over the years in finding the grant money to do the applied research work that will answer those needs, or bring in varieties of lemons that didn't exist in the United States before, or look at rootstocks or that kind of thing. So that's that's really what I like doing. I like helping people, be it farmers or homeowners. They send a picture in, they've got a branch on a tree that's dead, or they've got this problem or that problem. I enjoy doing that. And teaching master gardeners too, because they, you know, in Arizona, we have like 7 million people, and probably half of them own a citrus tree.
Yeah.
And it seems as though there's 100% turnover every year because you know what happens to those people. Maybe they just die, and then next
And
year,
then next crop
next
comes
the
in.
crop comes in, and so we have a continual tidal wave of questions about, and citrus is the #1 question that people ask.
So you're
in
very
Arizona.
important.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. So we
Great.
teach master gardeners mostly as a self-defense.
Yeah, I know. How many calls can you
Yeah,
take, right?
right.
You need those volunteers.
Right.
Awesome. So how long have you been a member of ASHS, and how has the society influenced your career?
Well, I think I've been a member. I was thinking about that. So probably not as an undergraduate, but as a graduate student. So beginning in maybe about 84 or
Mhm.
so. But I went to the first meeting in 80, I think it was in 86 in Orlando.
Mhm.
Scared crazy to
I
give a
know, right?
talk,
Exactly.
And but I had practiced, and I did that. So I've been a member ever since. And I have, I guess, my participation in the society has waxed and waned over the years. I have been the chair of numerous committees, never felt it necessary to become a vice president or anything like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's been helpful. I find that coming to meetings like this, where a lot of the people talk about things that are really not particularly close to what I'm working on. Sometimes you can gather some ideas that I wasn't expecting to be able to
Exactly.
get.
Exactly.
And by listening to the great talks and listening to the thing. So for example, we're working on thinning on date palms,
Mhm.
because thinning is a real big money sink for the growers. And some of my ideas about that came from listening to the folks talking about all these chemicals that they use on peaches and apples at this particular meeting several years
Exactly.
ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's been I go to other meetings that involve citrus or date palms, and of course you get a lot of information from there. But what I value about these is that I get exposed to things I hadn't necessarily thought about before,
Yeah,
which is nice.
that's great. Yeah. All right. What advice can you offer to students or young professionals in horticulture?
Um, I think the first thing is you don't have to reinvent the wheel, but always steal an idea.
Mhm.
And where I got that one was when I was a grad student, we went out with the Texas A&M graduate with the horticulture club, which is a mix of grad students and undergrads. And
Mhm.
we would go on these tours. And one time we went to Michigan and we met this guy who was a farmer who had a apple and cherry operation
Mhm.
on the right where Michigan meets Indiana. And he rented trees to people, to homeowners. So you could buy a tree as a homeowner and then an apple tree.
Mhm.
And then when the apples were ready, at a cost, of course, you had to pay for the apple tree, but they would harvest the entire crop of apples from that apple tree and ship them to you.
Wow.
Or you could come out and pick them yourself. So if you picked them yourself, it was no extra charge. But if you wanted to have somebody pick them for you, and ship them boxes and boxes of apples to you, they would do that. Well, I thought that was really innovative.
Mhm.
And this guy would bring folks over from Chicago in buses and give them picnics underneath the apple trees with gingham cloth
Yeah, there
picnic
you go.
tables.
Agro-tourism right
Yep.
there.
And he had a cherry pit spitting contest. And the politicians would show.
I love
And
it.
all of these cool ideas. And he said, always steal ideas. So I've always taken that and I've always wanted to go out and, we do things and we brought in things into citriculture and dates that people haven't done before, people hadn't
Mhm.
thought about before. There's certain varieties we're working on right now that in lemons that basically got put down at the repository, the germplasm repository, and never got noticed again until I and somebody else went out there and looked
That's
at it.
lovely.
So it's always be open to new ideas, new ways of doing things. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, you know. So I think that's the first thing. And related to that is, well, just expose yourself to as much as you can and become as an extension professional. What I found is that I have become the information hub for many things, and it not just nationally but internationally. So when our growers, date palm growers, want to know about what's going on the date palm world, I've been there to look at those kinds of things, you know, in Saudi Arabia and Oman and places like that. Or the lemon growers, you know, I've been to international meetings to look at lemons in Argentina, in Turkey, and in places like that. You know, again, it's kind of like getting the same thing. Always get new ideas, but don't limit yourself to the national things, but try to do the international things. And of course, it costs money, but if you can, you find yourself in a position where you are kind of the center of your own little kingdom. You know,
your horizons.
Yeah. And so, you know, there's nobody else in the US really who's a horticulturalist who works on dates other than me, which makes life very interesting.
A unicorn.
Yeah, right. And then if you look at the citrus world, of course, there's more people working on citrus, but if you ask people who is it that works on lemons, it's me. You know, we have people that sometimes work on lemons. Fred Gaminer works on lemons occasionally and all that kind of thing. But I've made myself a name as a lemon guy. You know, the lemon Dr. Lemon.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
one.
and so if you can do that, if you whatever it is, it could be a commodity like I've done, or a specific technique, or whatever it is, if you can establish yourself as the expert in that,
Yeah,
you can have
everybody knows you.
You can have a lot of influence.
Yeah,
a lot
that's
of
great.
influence.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
Okay, last question.
Okay.
What excites you most about the future of the horticultural industry and profession?
Well, the number of young people that I see here at the conferences is nice, you know. In Arizona, I would say that the horticultural industry is vibrant. The industry itself is vibrant, but the ability of the University of Arizona to meet the needs of the industry is not always as vibrant as we'd like, you know, because of
That's
funding
universal.
issues. Yeah, we've seen all that. So it's nice. It's still nice to see a lot of younger people. Of course, at my age, almost everybody's a younger person, but still, you know, it shows you that we're not, you know, we're not withering on the vine. And I guess the other thing that's interesting to me, that's exciting to me, is that everybody likes to eat, you know, and so, you know, there's always an underlying interest in society and horticulture. Now, if we can kind of get that focused in on improving funding to universities, that would be good.
Wouldn't that be lovely?
Yeah, but you know, in Yuma, we have a very in Arizona, and of course, similar to California, we have a very vibrant agricultural industry. So, you know, they're working with robotics and AI and all that kind of thing, and so that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, the technology
is pretty exciting. Yeah, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to a robotic citrus harvester, and I believe there's one that they're about to start testing.
Excellent. Very exciting.
Yeah.
Well, it was a pleasure getting to know you today.
Great.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, you know what? I have one other thing. It's in my position, and maybe not everybody's like my position, but many years ago I started taking Spanish, and I'm fluent in Spanish, and it's helpful to be fluent in another language. And in my case, it's helpful to be fluent in the language of the people who are actually picking the fruit.
Absolutely, 100%.
And so if you, in that situation, you have the ability to become fluent in the language of the people who are actually doing the day-to-day work, that's helpful.
And it's easier these days with Duolingo and all those different types of things that you can learn a second language, right there at your fingertips. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.